Hey there, today we have some answers from an airline pilot. My husband has been answering questions about the airplane, about things that go on in the cockpit of an airplane while we passengers are flying. A lot of these questions are from our YouTube channel viewers. So here is the next installment for this YouTube series about questions for an airline pilot. The number one question is, why is the cabin pressurized?
It's pressurized so that you can survive at altitudes up in the high 30,000s. So there's not a lot of oxygen up there. So we compress the air that we take from the outside and push it into the cabin. So it's somewhere around 4,000 to 6,000 feet so that you can continue to survive and be comfortable inside an airplane.
How fast does an airplane need to get before it can take off on the runway?
That's all based on the size of the plane and how much it weighs and if there are any obstacles we have to climb over. But I would say probably anywhere between 120 to 130 miles an hour for a jet of commercial size.
All right, and then the second question that this viewer had was, what are the minimums required to land? I'm assuming he's talking about weather?
Or it could be the distance of the runway. So how long the runway has to be. And once again, that varies on the size of the plane, the weight of the airplane on landing, and then other requirements that maybe the airline puts in for safety reasons.
Okay, so like what's a stereotypical runway length for an airplane that is going to London from Chicago?
I would say most commercial airports of size, the runways are anywhere between 9 to 13,000 feet long. The shortest ones that my airplane goes to is 5,400 feet long is the shortest. So half of that what a normal runway is.
Okay. And do they have to be that long for takeoff, or can you take off in really short runways?
We can take off and land on both 5,400 feet, but it requires a lot more performance than maybe just if we were taking off on a long runway.
Can the airplane that would go from like Chicago to London, can it take off on a 5,400?
Probably not, just because it's weighted down with gas. And it's too heavy, so you don't have enough pavement to get airborne. So.
Okay, and another question is, do you prefer shorter or longer flights to fly them?
I prefer shorter because it keeps you engaged more. Long flights have long periods of doing nothing, so the shorter flights keep my mind going so the day goes by faster.
Mm-hmm. Do you do the same routes? Or do they vary every day?
No, we rarely do the same routes every day. Most airlines have some kind of software that tries to maximize or make the most efficient use of a pilot. So we'll tend to be on a 3 or 4 day trip, go to maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different cities, but rarely we just go out and back, out and back, out and back to the same ones.
Okay. All right. And then Suzanne wanted to know, she says that her airplane dropped 8,000 feet in 2 minutes. Does that mean the airplane is out of control?
Usually not. I don't have ever heard of an airplane that was completely out of control. If it was caused by turbulence, those are rare events that do happen. If the crew was trying to lose 8,000 feet in 2 minutes, I would find that very surprising as to why they would try to be doing it that quickly.
So especially when we fly standby, we will sometimes get the emergency row seat. So one of our questions has to be, when you are in the emergency row and you're the only one in that row, what happens if the other seats are not occupied?
It's rare because it seems like the skies have been so crowded lately that we don't have empty seats, especially in the exit row, because it's tend to have the best leg room. But if that were a concern to our flight attendants, they would reseat some people that were willing to help out into the exit row if they needed to be.
Okay, here is a funny question that all of us have probably wondered. What happens if you are sitting on the toilet seat in the airplane lavatory and you have like extreme turbulence? Is the fluid going to come out?
Most airplanes today, and I say more modern airplanes, don't even use fluid. It's just a vacuum system. So we take advantage of the pressurization difference from inside and outside the airplane to create a vacuum to suck the waste, and we don't dump it overboard. It just puts it into a holding tank. So I don't think that there is really that much of a chance of the blue juice, is what we call it, hitting any part of you.
All right, can it suction you to the seat?
That is a urban legend. That yes, it may try to, but it only provides the vacuum to get the product out of the bowl, and it only stays on for maybe 5 seconds, and then it would release whatever suction it did have.
Okay. Do you get weather forecasts before you fly as to where the turbulence is going to occur?
Yes. Most airlines use very robust flight planning software that looks at a myriad of things: weather, turbulence, winds, and it will always find the most efficient route, but also the most comfortable route. So we'll commonly get not maybe the quickest way to get there, but we're getting the way that's the smoothest and the safest.
Also, is it true that airplanes shake when you go through clouds?
They not always do, but clouds are formed because of uneven air masses. So air is rising next to an air that is not. And so as it rises, it pushes the moisture out of it and forms clouds. So because you have two different air masses that are rising at different levels, you probably are going to get some bumps as you go through clouds.
Also, do flights have AEDs on board? And what are those?
An AED is a device that allows us to administer an electric shock to someone whose heart is stopped without having to be a doctor. It's got software where you just put the leads on and it walks you through and it will actually determine if the person needs to be shocked or not. And then if it does, it asks you to step aside and it will administer the shock so that we're not having to do it on our own if we're not trained medical professionals. As far as are they on board, that's going to vary by airline, but most airlines today all have at least one on board. But I'm not sure if they're required to, but I know most airlines have chosen to.
Okay. Another question about turbulence is why and when did the term turbulence come about to describe rough air?
Those are semantics that we use. There's a lot of people that get on airplanes that are very nervous flyers. So sometimes the term rough air sounds better than turbulence, just like a rain shower may sound better than a thunderstorm. So we maybe use the terms rough air to make those that are nervous feel like it's not that bad.
Okay. We have a whole video about that where he talks about it. So I'll make sure I link it up there and in the first comment. How early do pilots need to get to the airport before a flight?
That's going to vary by the airline policy, but most airlines, for a domestic flight, we get to the airport normally an hour prior to departure. And then sometimes for longer overseas flights, they may do like 90 minutes just to make sure that they meet and do all the briefing because the flight plans are longer. There's more weather to look at over a longer period of time. So they may get there earlier for that.
And then how long does the pre-flight checks take?
I would say for us, if we're at the airplane 30 minutes prior, we can easily get out by on time. So I would say anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes.
Does it vary from model to model?
It does. The bigger the airplane may have more technical stuff to go through. And longer flights tend to have more stuff to check.
And do you know if there are any undercover marshals on board these days?
There might be, and we'll never tell you if there are.
And then another question is, what are the alcohol limits for pilots who are working?
So in the U.S., the FAA says that you cannot consume any alcohol 8 hours prior to departure. Some airlines may have a little bit more stringent policies on top of what the FAA does. But the gist of it is you can't always base it by time. Your blood alcohol level has to be below the legal limit, and the legal limit is different in every country before you even come to the airport and get in an airplane. So you have to be very cognizant of how much alcohol you're consuming because it's not always just about the time. It's about your blood alcohol concentration at the time that you show up to the airport.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll have everything listed below in the first comment and say, hey, if we have not met you yet.
Bye.